If there's one car that I hate and despise most in this world, it is Mercedes' EQC. So today, let's forget about the EQC, because it was a legacy effort by Mercedes, and let's take a look at their newest car, the one that is perhaps, in their opinion, the most important car for them going forward, and that is the S-Class of Mercedes EVs, the EQS. It's based on their new EVA2 platform, which is going to be shared across loads of other future Mercedes EQ cars. Same with the exterior design, same with the interior technology. So, super important, considering this is a brand who says that they are going to be electric first by 2030. But competition is tough with the likes of Porsche, with the likes of Audi, and even more day by day coming through. Can Mercedes maintain itself as the luxury king of this new era? Let's find out today as we explore this, the brand new Mercedes EQS 450 Plus. So guys, today's episode of RBI is once again sponsored by Manscaped, the company who care about your balls and your hygiene. And they're back with a new Performance Package 4.0, and I'm going to show you the whole package right now. Got a great discount and deal for you guys on this new Performance 4.0 package, guys. First of all, they've redone the trimmer now. This is now the new version, which looks a lot sleeker. Still got the LED light in there and skin-safe technology on the blades that you can replace. And if you go on their peak hygiene plan, you get replacements for all these products periodically. You also get, as before, the deodorant and the toner in here. You actually get a wireless stand now as well for this, which is pretty cool. We've got more value added than our last deal with this, the Weed Whacker, which is a trimmer for nose and ear hair. So a great bonus for you guys. And you even get 2 free gifts with Manscaped underwear and the Shed carry case. Guys, if you go to manscaped.com, use the code RBR, you'll get 20% off and free international shipping, including all the gifts and everything I've shown you in the package here. Guys, support our sponsors. Back to the episode. So guys, like I said, this is a super important car for Mercedes-Benz going forward. They're basing so many models on this architecture or this general thinking that the EQS is based on. And for a company that's going to be electric first from 2030 onwards, this car has to make it or break it. The first thing you must understand about EQS, it's not just S in name, it's also being built in the exact same factory as our brand new S-Class. They're being built side by side, same materials, same factory, same production line, and you'll see that ethos of the S-Class flow through this car as this review continues on. So let's dive straight in. Let's remind you what the EQS is based on in terms of technology. At the heart of the car is the 107 kilowatt capacity battery that lays at the floor of the car as you would expect. It can be charged up to 200 kilowatts at a fast charging station, and you can get 300 kilometers of charge in just 15 minutes from this battery. The range is insane, 700 plus kilometers range. When I turned the car on this morning to take it for a short drive, on a full charge, we're looking at something like 400 plus being quoted to us by the car, which is insane when you look at all of the rivals not even reaching 300 in real world usage. So the lithium-ion battery, massive, of course it's heavy, of course larger than the rivals as well, which is why it's giving more range, but of course this is an S-Class level car rather than being lower down the scale like Taycan, etc. Now let's look at the electric motors. So let us start with the car that we're driving today, and that is the EQS 450 Plus. This is a rear-wheel drive only car, which has got a single electric motor on the rear. This is a permanently synchronous electric motor, or a permanently excited one, which is the most efficient way currently to have an electric motor. It's always active, it always has power driven to it, which is why it's always on or always alive, and makes it super efficient when you're driving fast or slow. So we have that on the rear, and this provides 329 brake horsepower by itself to the rear wheels. We have around about 560 Newton meters of torque, and finally a 0 to 60 quoted of 6.2. There is a model higher available in other territories, which is the EQS 580. This brings in another electric motor on our front end here, which provides additional power, bringing the power up to around about 500 plus brake horsepower, 800 plus Newton meters, and an even quicker 0 to 60 of around 4 seconds. Both cars have massive recuperation power of 290 kilowatts, and both cars can do up to 210 kilometers per hour top speed. The EQS is, however, single-speed transmission only, unlike Taycan and e-tron, which are 2-speed. Mercedes say this gives the car a more luxury focus. Let's see if they actually add it into any more sporty cars in the future. Now, in terms of the chassis, like I said, this car is quite related to our S-Class. So our 4-link front and our multi-link rear is very closely related to that which is used in the S-Class. We've also got active air suspension, which is even more clever. As you'll see later in the interior review, uses GPS data to determine the height of the car as you're driving, which is pretty amazing. Digital light from the S-Class makes a return as well, which is the projection of light onto the ground for both the driver and for pedestrians, depending whether it's available in that country or not. Now, this car also takes into account how clean the air should be within the cabin with an additional air balance package that restricts almost 100% of foreign particles from getting into our cabin. So very clean in that sense as well. More interesting to do with air, however, is the aerodynamics. This is actually the most aerodynamic car in the entire world. It's the record holder with a C value of 0.2 only, which is pretty amazing. And that's what, again, helps with the range. And that brings us then neatly onto design, because without this design, that C value and that range would probably not be possible. But it is a strange design. And that is what we call this cab forward design. It's having the A-pillar all the way here, our front wheel very much close to the front. You can see because of that, we have an extra window section here with EQS written on it. And it's just a very odd shape compared to what we're used to. A lot of us kind of call it a Prius Plus, if you like, and it is very much like that. And to me, when I think of a Mercedes saloon, I think S-Class. That is a traditional shape, nice long bonnet, nice greenhouse, you know, semi-long boots as well. This is taking some getting used to. I mean, frankly speaking, this whole one bow design, which again is that clean line, almost like a boat going through the roof line, I'm not really a fan of it. And before you say this is because it's an EV, take a look at the Taycan. Nice long bonnet, short greenhouse, muscular looks. Of course, e-tron based on the same car. We've seen other cars as well from all over the world showing that a traditional design can be done. But of course, Mercedes favoring something totally different to their combustion cars for their EQ ones. And this is a risk that either is going to pay off big or might be a little bit of a disaster for them. What could they have done with it? I think the car could have looked like this. Could have been more traditional, more like simply an S-Class with all that EQ technology, all the batteries, etc. Maybe you would have gotten, I don't know, 10, 20% less range. But to have a car that looks more familiar, less alienating, more muscular and more sporty, in my humble opinion, would have worked better. Now let's have a proper close look at the exterior. Come with me. First thing, which is quite interesting, our bonnet. It has no joins because, of course, it doesn't open. It's completely flush with our wheel arch, which is why, again, this area looks kind of odd to us because we're used to seeing an interesting line or something going on here, whereas here this is completely sealed. There's no power domes to speak of. Again, everything with an aerodynamic basis. So the bonnet, again, quite strange. On the front, we have our black panel, which is the main EQ thing, really, inspired by AVTR and the EQS Concept. You can see here we've got the Mercedes stars, which actually looks quite nice, reminds me of F1. You've got the long bar light that goes through here, connecting to our side digital lights, 3 dots like S-Class combustion car, hiding within the lights, denoting this as an S. Underneath, this being the AMG line, you see the typical air curtains on each side with the AMG fins. Typical AMG lower mouth A-wing as well, all very reminiscent of our S-Class AMG line as well. On the side, we got AMG wheels in aero design, kind of mimicking our wheels from the past, but much more aerodynamic. As we said, you've got the EQS logo here. This strange thing here is actually our washer fluid, which is quite a prominent place to have for something like that. But of course, you can't open the bonnet, so what choice do you have? We've got flush door handles, as you found in the S-Class. With a simple tap, they open up. They're also ambient lit, which is really quite nice and it looks fantastic at night. Our side sills, again, gloss black, chrome here. Nothing much going on the side of the car, is there? It's very, very flat, hardly any character lines. I think there's just too little, personally. And then when you look at the side-on view of the car, it's like the greenhouse starts and never finishes. There's hardly any bonnet, hardly any boot. Mercedes want to liken it a bit to like the CLS look. I'm not so convinced. Let's have a look at the rear. We've got the long bar light, as every EQ has as well. I quite like the 3D textures within them though, that looks cool. You've got the spoiler lip here at the top of the boot lid as well. Unique font for EQ family. Mercedes star in the middle. We've got our diffuser with 6 fins, and where the exhaust will normally be 2 chrome strips here as well. It doesn't look too bad actually, the rear. I think the rear, for me, the least offensive part of this car. As a long-term Mercedes customer, this car is a bit of a culture shock for me. Design-wise, I'd love to know what you guys think. Chime in below, let's have a discussion. Now, one thing that S-Class does not have, at least not in its standard form, is the comfort automatic doors of the EQS. It's a feature that is pretty damn amazing, and if I bought the car, I would absolutely have it because it's such a party trick and it's pretty convenient as well. Let me show you what that's like right now. Right guys, there's typical use EQS walking up to the car before your journey. The car detects your presence and opens the door for you. How fantastic is that? And then it doesn't end there. All you do, put your foot on the brake, and the doors close themselves for you as the car wakes up. How fantastic is that? Very impressive. Now, time to get out. Do I actually push the door? Of course not. EQS will open the doors for you. Doesn't end there. Let's say you are also the rear passenger and you want to get in the car. Just a quick flick of the door. And the door will open itself for you. Similarly, when you're closing it, one other cool thing I found is that all you have to do is a light flick. The door will close itself, and of course self-close as you're used to in S-Class, which is fantastic. Now, another typical use in EQS of the comfort doors is using the hyperscreen, whether before or when you finish your journey, and it's really simple. All you need is a little swipe, and that opens your door up. And it's so easy to do with all of your doors. We could just swipe that one open as well. That one as well. And indeed, even the driver's one as well, as you can see. And you also get the option to close them all. All you need to do is hold it down. And boom, there you go. And of course, there's also collision detection. You saw those red hashes come near the doors. If it thinks that there's any chance of there being a collision with something near the doors, then it won't allow you to do this. The other thing that carries over from S-Class is rear wheel steering. The car comes standard with 4.5 degrees, and our car today has the full option of 10 degrees, and that's something I need to show you right now. Now you can see as I'm moving within this driveway of mine, which is fairly narrow for a large car like the EQS, you can see the rear wheels turning up to 10 degrees, making any movements within here so much easier than I'd be used to normally in a car of this size. You can imagine around town, etc. It's going to be amazing. Let's see what it's like on the drive later. So that's the tech and the design, the latter area of contention in my opinion. But one thing that is not in contention is how amazing the interior is of the EQS, and I need to show you it right now. So guys, the interior. This is where now the EQS really makes its mark, and this is what, for me, the car is all about, and where the car wins against the competition, because the system in this car, tied with the luxury element, is something that no one can match at the moment. I love doing the door closing thing, by the way. It's a little bit weird sometimes, because sometimes when I jump in the car, I'm used to putting my foot straight on the brake and closing the door myself, as we all are, and you find yourself fighting against the motors, and then you have to kind of let go and say, okay, I'll let you do it. But it's something I'm sure you'll get your head around eventually. Now the EQS, all about the gigantic hyperscreen. Essentially, it's not one screen, it's 3 screens. One driver zone, one gigantic central screen, and then a smaller screen for our passenger on the side. Now, as you found with MBUX in the S-Class, as I showed you, there's a number of ways to log into the car. I've set a PIN at the moment. You can do fingerprint recognition as well, voice recognition, facial recognition, because you've got cameras everywhere tracking things. So many ways to log on, many ways to save your data as individual driver. So you have your own settings, and it's really important for a car that has so many settings that you can just easily get lost in them. And you don't want to have to keep resetting them. Now, our main screen is navigation. It's weird because when you go into the app search on the home button, there's no like separate thing for navigation like we used to, because that is the zero layer or the first screen or the main screen that Mercedes have set up in this car. On top of that, you get at the bottom a row of your most frequently used functions. So we've got like the comfort doors that I've been using so much in this review, or frequent destinations, your devices for Bluetooth, etc. You've got EQ right at the top to find your charging stations, your parking spaces, etc. Each EQ also gives you like your navigation functions as well. And then you can go into the home area and find all your usual stuff like your comfort with the energizing comfort function that you find in S-Class, all of the massage functions that you find in S-Class, your seat heating balance, your lumbar, your side bolsters, all of that in here. Ambient lighting, like with the S, is a win. It's not as good as the S-Class one though, because the S-Class one had the thick bar that was a lot better at animating. Like when you were talking to the vocal assistant, it would pulse white. This does pulse, so if I say, hey Mercedes,
how can I help?
You can see it's pulsing here. So it doesn't look quite as good as the one in the S-Class, but it does continue to listen like the S-Class one, so the same technology, just not as cool in the way it looks. Ambient lighting we can actually change here, as you can see, all to different colors as per your tastes. There's quite an interesting one here, which is energy shine, where the ambient lighting reacts based on how you're driving, when you're braking, when you're accelerating, when you're coasting. I'm going to show you that particular one when we go on the drive, which is cool, but for now we'll set it to a nice bright blue so you can enjoy the ambient lighting. So you have all of that in your comfort area. In your settings itself, one of the really cool and interesting things was sound experience. Now in this car, you have two different sound experiences currently. One is called Silver Waves, that's the sound for that. One is called Vivid Flux. We're going to be driving it in Vivid Flux, which it's a bit more sporty. There will be more options, and they will be downloadable on an over-the-air update for the EQS. Very, very sporty sounding, I think even better than the ones that they have here. So look forward to seeing that later. Then you've got other stuff in here like GPS-based raising of the car's suspension. So it's looking, with all the GPS data it has, to know when to raise the car in certain areas, which is brilliant. Then we've got the dynamic select, which is cool because you can go from eco to comfort, sport, and then individual as well, which you can tailor to your own needs, from everything from drive, suspension, steering, ESP, sound. But basically, this middle horizontal screen does everything that tall S-Class one does, but in a slightly different UI because it's wider and with a basis on EQ. So in the future, you'll be able to do, say, a long journey of 7 hours, and the EQ function will calculate which charging stations you have on the way, when you should stop, how long you'll be stopping for. It will tell you which ones are still free, and it'll keep checking these things and change the route if it needs to. You can go in there and choose the power of the charging stations you want as well, which is brilliant. And when it comes to charging, so many options. You've got Eco Charge, for example, which decreases the strain on the battery, and the charge level is reduced to 80%, so you don't need to do that final slog. You've got a range function as well, which suggests to you which functions you can turn off to increase your range if you need to, and then a consumption one as well, all very nicely animated here, as you can see. In terms of basic usage, you've got your usual driver zones. Sport one is unique here in the EQS. You can see it's very Starship looking, and it marries the heads-up display that you can get in the same format. Heads-up display, nice and large like we saw on S-Class. Of course, you get the other usual driver zone screens as well. A shame that there's no 3D screen like you get in the S-Class, another area where the S-Class simply better. Now this is AMG line, but we've got the standard steering wheel. You can get the AMG line steering wheel as well. You'll note the paddles. We'll talk about this on driving. Of course, it's not shifting gears, all about recuperation. Now let's talk about the general structure of the interior. Of course, you've got hyperscreen. Surrounding it is this rose gold vent structure. And it's a very slight rose gold. You can almost blink and miss it, but it's enough to give this its own character. I like the joins on the side. I like the curves, the door cards, everything connects very well. One thing I'm not sure about is how high the dash is. I can't perceive any corner of the car. Can't really see the road that well. If I go too high, I feel like I'm driving an SUV. So I'm not really convinced about driving position at the moment. The seats are nice. like I said, soft like S-Class, well trimmed like S-Class. You got the old S-Class cushion as well. No problems with any of that. The seat's quite slim as well, very nice looking, but driving position, I'm just not convinced at the moment. Door cards remind me of S-Class with the floating area for your seat controls and your door handle. You got the lovely new switches, Burmeister sound speakers, one really weird one in the corner here near the A-pillar. I love the analog looking jet fighter vents here. These are fantastic. And they're a nice contrast to the very digital hyperscreen. So kind of a hyper analog thing going on here, which is quite cool. With the vents, you also have the ambient lighting flowing throughout it as well. Center console, of course, you've got nothing here. So a nice storage area at the bottom as you want. Another storage area in here with your cup holders, which are quite nicely done, similar to like VW cars. You also get, look, touchscreen cloth, which is great because you're going to need it a lot. The screen doesn't actually pick up fingerprints as badly as I think it does. I think it's probably got some kind of oleophobic coating. Some nice storage in here as well. You've got another compartment on this side as well. So loads of storage options for you. Now the other cool thing is you go into apps and, for example, you can play Tetris. Look! All right guys, here we go. I'm playing Tetris in the EQS now. I figured out later after filming that B-roll that it's easier just to use the directional buttons rather than the touchscreen. How useful that is, I don't know, maybe for chauffeur drivers or kids or something. More useful is you can get over-the-air updates for specific vehicle features. For example, the rear wheel steering that we talked about, well, that can go up to 10.5 degrees with an over-the-air update coming later this year. So, pretty useful, but a bit of a kick in the nuts as well, because why not just preload the car with it when it's capable of doing it? I don't know. There's also something called beginner driving mode, which is like a teaching function. I haven't had time to kind of dive into it yet, but you can see Mercedes' thinking here, trying to bring value added to their customer. Finally, you've got one more screen for the passenger over here. Gives you most of the functions that you find here as well, including playing all the games that we saw. But how useful would it really be? I'm not convinced. I think if you had a kid here, they'd probably still want to be on their phone. Now, let's check out the rear, because for an S-Class level car, rear space and comfort, very, very important, and it's something that the rivals aren't doing. So guys, rear of the EQS. Let's have a look. Of course, the comfort doors, very nice feature. Now, because of the abnormally long wheelbase, because of the fact that this is a battery electric vehicle and the way that Mercedes have gone about designing it, one of the benefits of the cab forward design and having the wheels basically on each corner is so much more room for the occupants. Now, when you look at the size of the car, as we saw, not in length dissimilar to your standard S-Class, but inside, the amount of room I've got here with my legs. Headroom isn't too bad. There's a good, I would say 4 inches above my head about. That much space available, and me being 5'10", so there's good room in order for someone larger than me to fit. We also have a slight reclining function on the chair. It's not a huge amount. Actually, hang on. That is quite significant. But it doesn't go back that much. It straightens up, which I'm not sure what the use is for, maybe load space in the back. Rear has its own climate control unit. The vents has the same rose gold within there as well. Again, the door cards reminding me a lot of the normal S-Class. The entire ambience, really. I mean, the way that the seats have been stitched, the softness of the actual pillows of the seats. Of course, you've got your cushions here as well. It's all very S-Class. And speaking of S-Class, you can get the individual seats then with the screens to kind of match that rear entertainment flavour of a full long wheelbase S-Class as well. So all of that doable. But then really, when you compare it to long wheelbase S-Class, you're feeling a little bit more claustrophobic despite, you know, the big panoramic roof. So while it is undoubtedly the most luxurious EV you can get at the moment, it's not still, if you're talking pure luxury and not propulsion, it's not quite there with S-Class in the rear, is it? What do I think of the interior in general? I think the driver zone puts me off a little bit. I really do think MBUX is fantastic. I think the hyperscreen could meld together a little bit better with these 3 separate screens. As much as Mercedes are saying it's one big screen, I don't really think it is. And generally, I prefer the interior structure of the S-Class. Now, one thing that's super important to me, and one thing I loved, is the fact that this is an EV that actually tells you when the bloody thing is turned on, unlike most of the rivals again. So with sound experience on, I get a startup sound and then a consistent hum. It's kind of like a melody in this particular one. The ones I saw that you can download later are a bit more vehicle-like. But now I know that the car is on. And when I turn it off, again, the same. It's like a powering down sound. And this is so important for all of us because we're used to knowing when a vehicle is active, and I love that. That's fantastic. Now, guys, let's head out. Let's see what this car drives like. I'm thinking S-Class. That's the level that I'm going to judge it against. Let's see how the EQS does on the road. Right, now, you see this? This never gets old. I apologize for showing it to you too many times. Now, driving experience of EQS, it's all about the little things from what I found. For example, like we discussed, the fact that we get a lovely startup sound, which is great. So the first pleasing thing for me, which I didn't have an EQC and I really wanted, was some sound. Of course, you can turn off sound experience if you want to, but I can't imagine why you'd want it. It gives you so much feedback as a driver as to what the vehicle is actually doing. So we have a really nice acceleration sound, and even in braking, kind of the tune changes a little bit, which is quite cool. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to change the ambient lighting on the fly here to that one that reacts based on how you're driving. Red is speed, that's cool, and blue is recuperation. And in terms of the sound, you have your normal sound, and then if we put the car into sport, the sound profile changes and you get like a little sound there as well that tells you that it's happened. And oh, listen to that. That's cool. Wow. Listen to that. Even when I pull off, you get kind of a, can you hear that like electrical vibration? It's almost like an overrun sound, but for an electric vehicle. Very, very clever. I like it. Again, from standstill. That is so cool, especially with the ambient lighting. Oh, how exciting. Listen. Wow. It's like we're going to take off or something. And then coming to a hard stop. Mercedes, you've made something really cool. Why couldn't you have made it actually look cool? That would have been an idea. To be honest, it makes me even more excited to see what will the over-the-air update versions be like that I saw, particularly the Sporty Pulse version. And what are AMG going to do with it? They'll have a few different versions of sound as well. Hopefully no engine sounds, but if it's anything as cool as this, I love the way the ambient lighting is reacting. It's really menacing. It's like, you know when a villain like the Borg or the Reapers from Mass Effect turn up? That's kind of the sinister sounds you're getting in sport mode. It's quite nice. And that overrun sound is cool. Sorry, I've gone way, way further into sound than I ever thought I would in this video. That's a good thing. The animations within our driver zone here are really, really cool as well. They match perfectly with the heads-up display animations I'm getting. I'm going to take back what I said about the driving position, because having got into a flow of it, I can kind of now understand where the wheels are. Now, does this feel like a heavy car? Of course it does. You know, we're talking 200 kg heavier than a Porsche Taycan that just passed us there. But it's by no means like unwieldy. It very much reminds me of S-Class, right? Of course, as we've seen with rear wheel steer systems in the past, you kind of get that on rails effect. Now, I didn't have the benefit of trying an S-Class with it, but in this, it feels quite interesting. You kind of shorten the wheelbase in shorter turnings, and as you pick up speed, it stabilizes the car by extending the wheelbase, by turning in the same direction. Let's talk about the steering for a moment, which is pretty good. Not massive amount of feedback, but you liken it to your best luxury cars. Again, like S-Class, no surprise there. I'm not feeling fearful of putting on speed in this, and it doesn't feel slow. I know the 0 to 60 is meant to be 6 seconds, but the immediate power that you get, that push of torque, no gear changes needed, it feels really fast. To me, it feels faster than the rear-wheel drive Taycan that I thought was quite sluggish. Sound experience helps so much in this regard as well as all the ambient lighting, etc. Mercedes has done a really good job trying to add some emotion to this, and I'd be more than happy to drive around fast in the EQS. Now let's take it back to S-Class. You can hear again the sound, that tells you when you're in comfort mode. The sound experience system has lessened now. We've got slightly softer suspension and complete silence. This cabin is so quiet. I mean, I think it's louder in the living room of my house than this thing. Tip for chauffeurs: do not fart, even the silent ones, because the rear passenger will hear you. No, but genuinely, so quiet, even at speeds. Of course, it's the world's most aerodynamic car. There's so much sound insulation. All of the learning of S-Class over the years in terms of sound editing and Maybach brought into EQS, and you can see it in action or hear it. The thing that makes the S-Class the king of cars for me is how effortless and easy that car is to drive. And honestly, if you blindfolded me and put me in the EQS, it's the same experience as I get out of the brilliant new S-Class. The steering is great, your power delivery is like from your top combustion engines. And the thing that defines S-Class is anyone can drive it. When you start driving it, you immediately get an idea of the size because the chassis and the steering, etc. is so good. The power never fails you, the braking never fails you. It's just an infallible car. And the EQS drives in much of the same way. Now I'm going to put it into increased recuperation mode, which is when you use the paddle, so I minused it. And now it's like one pedal driving. So I will accelerate and the car will decelerate itself. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's quite interesting to use in scenarios like traffic or stop-start driving, where you don't want to keep going on and off the brakes. One pedal driving is a pretty cool way of recuperating energy, and it's something totally unique to EVs. Then you got no recuperation, even more like combustion cars, allows a bit more travel, none of that stopping that I was talking about initially as we took off. Range has dropped from an approximate 380 down to about 345, because I'm driving like a lunatic, but that would happen in your S500 V8 car of old as well, wouldn't it? If range is your thing, what else can you buy that does what this car does? The luxury element, having 450 miles of range if you're driving sensibly on an EV car. Even the hyper-tuning, I think, just fades into the background as just part of the overall experience, which is actually really quite good when you're driving. So the only downside, really, is that exterior, which is subjective, but personally, I just can't jive with it. I would love to see this system in a car that actually looked like a Mercedes-Benz. Because honestly, if the car looked right, I'd be happy with both this infotainment system and this electric drivetrain with all these sounds. I think it can just work. As it stands, I would pass on the car simply because of the way it looks, but this absolutely gives me hope for the future, because I came into this drive thinking there's no way that I'm going to like the way that this car drives. It's going to have much of the emotionless feel of EQC, and nothing could be farther from the truth. This is one of the most emotional EVs that you'll ever get to drive. It's one of the most effortless luxury cars that you'll ever get to drive. It is really, really up there with S-Class. And as a petrol head, popping it into sport and having a bit of a hoon around is actually damn fun. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this first full drive of the EQS 450 Plus. If you have, please do like, subscribe and share. Help RBR get to 1 million subscribers, guys. I really appreciate it. And see you guys next time.